Hello and welcome to introductory course of Python programming. In the past I have created many courses about Python, MySQL, JavaScript, Java and other courses, but this one is going to be a little bit different. In this short 40-minute course we are going to dive into basics of Python programming. The course is designed for absolute beginners, so even if you've never written a line of code before, you're in the right place. By the end of this session, you will have solid understanding of fundamentals of Python. And also you will be learning a couple of tricks, so maybe you can surprise your friends or family members. We will be learning concepts such as variables, data types, control flow with if statements and loops. Plus we will work on a fun little project together at the end. So I imagine if I was starting to learn coding right now, I will do a couple of things. I will do my research and find out which programming language should I start with and which languages are in the demand. So why learning Python? Well, Python is one of the most popular programming languages in the world. And for a good reason. It's known for its simple and readable syntax, which makes it an excellent choice for beginners, meaning any regular person can read a Python code and understand some parts of it. This is what we mean when we say simple readable syntax. Python is incredibly versatile. It's used for web development, data science, machine learning, automation, even some games are running Python. All of the major companies that you know of, they're using Python. And here's a couple of companies that for sure use Python. It's Google, NASA, ChatGPT is one of them, Facebook, Dropbox, Spotify, Instagram. So all the companies are using Python because it's simple and it's very useful and it's great for machine learning, and nowadays machine learning is almost everything. Okay, so I really encourage you to follow along with the coding examples. Don't worry if you make mistakes, that's part of the learning process. Pause the video whenever you need to and feel free to experiment with the code on your own. And at the end, if you enjoyed this introductory course and want to delve deeper into Python programming, I also offer a comprehensive 5-hour course where we explore advanced topics and build more complex projects. But for now, let's get started with the basics and have some fun. Alright, let's jump right in. Okay, the first thing I want you to do is to open python.org. This is the Python's official website, and we are going to head over to downloads. And on the right you can see Python 3.12. At this point this is the latest version of Python, but in the future you might see a different version. Don't worry and download the latest version. And if it doesn't say the operating system that you're using on the top, on the left you can choose the correct operating system, such as Mac OS, Windows and other platforms. Okay, after clicking you will start downloading the installer, and once it's done we open it. So for installing on Windows, we want to click on Use Admin Privilege and add Python to Pet. For Mac users, the installation is simpler. They just open the installer and they just click Next and agree to the terms, and they just press Install. Okay, now you have Python installed on your computer. Next, we have to install Code Editor. We use the Code Editor to write our code and execute it. The most popular editor for Python is PyCharm. PyCharm is very beginner friendly. It will highlight any errors that you make and it will help you to fix them. So to download it we have to go to jetbrains.com, PyCharm, and we press download. On the top you have to choose your operating system, then scroll down and press download PyCharm Community Edition. Once it's downloaded, open the installer and press next until you see install. So for the Mac installation, once you open the installer, you just have to drag and drop the PyCharm to applications and that'll be it. Okay, we have successfully installed PyCharm. So let's click Run PyCharm and let's click Finish. And we're greeted with welcome to PyCharm. So click new project. Over here we provide the name of the project, and then we can provide the location of the project. And once you're happy with the name and the location, you press create. So here we have it, our project inside of PyCharm. In this window we can see our Python project, and at this point we have only one folder. Currently we don't have any Python files. A real Python application contains hundreds or even thousands Python files. So let's create our first Python file. Right click on Python project, then new, then we want to click Python file, and let's name it main. Click enter. Let's close this window, and at this point we're all done. Now let's type your first code. Type print, parentheses, double quotes, and inside of these quotes let's type hello world. And on the right we have a green play button. This is how we run our code, and as you can see, small window popped up at the bottom. This is what we call terminal window. And you can see that we have our text that we just typed, hello world. So this was your first program. You just typed a command for Python to output the text that you have wrote. Alright, now let's talk about variables. In Python we use variables to store data. This is how you create a variable. First you have to give a meaningful name. Then you have to put equal sign, and only after the equal sign you can provide your data. In this case I want to create a string. In programming, a string is a data type used to represent a sequence of characters. A character is anything you can type on a keyboard, such as letters or numbers, or special characters. In Python, to represent the data that is a string, we can use either a single quote or a double quote. So anything I put inside of these quotes would be considered a string data type by Python. Let's imagine that we are creating a game, and in our game we need some sort of a greeting. I'm going to type hello player. Feel free to type anything you want. Okay, now we know how to create a variable for text, aka string. Now I need a variable to store my game score, and I will call it game score equals, let's say, 42. So a whole number is called integer in programming, or int for short. So we just have created our first int. Integer is a whole number, meaning it doesn't have any fractional or decimal parts. It can be positive or negative or zero. I think integer is a great fit for a game score, because I don't think it's practical to use decimal point when scoring something. And one more important thing, when we are naming our variables, if variable name contains more than one word, we separate them using underscore. Otherwise, if we have them connected, it's not really readable, as you can see. Okay, I think we also need a health variable for our player. Let's give our player 87.5 health. Okay, now we have created a variable called health with the float data type. Float is a short for floating point number. It's a data type used to represent a real number. So int is a whole number and float is a decimal point number. Okay, now I think we need a variable to check if our game is on or it's off. Let's call it game on. And let's type equals true. So this data type is called Boolean. Boolean represents only two possible values, true or false. Boolean is case sensitive. It always have to be uppercase, otherwise you will get an error. Boolean is really helpful. It helps you to identify if something is true or false. In this case, we are using it to check if our game is on or it's off. If it's true, it's on. If it's off, then it's equals to false. Okay, now let's use print with our data types. Let's print greeting, then let's print game score, health, and game on. Print statement is really helpful. We use it to check the current flow of our program. Okay, let's look at our syntax. We're telling Python, create variable name greeting and store string. Then we're creating game score and storing an integer. Then we have health, we store float, and we have game on with Boolean data type. Then we're telling Python to print our variables. Let's press run and see what happens. Okay, our terminal have opened and we can see that process finished with exit code 0. It means everything was successful. And we can see that everything have been printed in the same exact order. So this is how we create and use variables in Python. Okay, let me show you how to receive an input from a user. So in Python we have a function called input. It helps us to take a user input. It allows the user to enter data and the entered data is returned as a string. Let me show you an example. Let's open the parentheses. Then we have to put the quotation marks. And everything we put inside of the quotation mark will be prompted to our user as a text. So let's ask our user, what's your name? And let's run the program. Now we can see in our terminal the input function. At this point the Python is still running and it's waiting for us to type our answer. It's really easy to determine if the Python is running. You can just take a look at the top and you will see that instead of the play button we have the restart button and we have the stop button. And as the name suggests, the restart button will restart our program and the stop button will kill our program. Okay, now that we have that out of the way, let's type our value. I'm going to type Carl and press enter. So once I pressed the enter, input function have received my input and the program have ended because we have no other code after the input function. Okay, but what do we do with the user entry? How this is helpful? This function is really helpful because we can do something like this. We can assign a variable to the input function. So the name variable will hold the user entry. And now we can do something like this. Print hello and let's add our name. So what you're doing here is called string concatenation. We are connecting two strings together. Okay, let's run our program one more time. And once again I'm going to enter Carl and this time I got the response back, hello Carl. So what just happened? We told Python to use the input function and ask us a question. Then we told Python to assign the received input to a variable called name. And then we told Python to use print function and to concat hello with the name. So this is how we use the input function with Python. Now let's talk about arithmetic operators in Python. They are the same operators that we have in math. For example, we can add numbers, we can subtract them, we can multiply and so on. Let's create a variable x that equals 10 and variable y that equals 3. Then let's create a result that equals x plus y. And let's print the result. And when we run the program, we have 13. This is the addition operator. Also, we have subtraction, then we have multiplication, and we have division. Technically, in Python, we have two types of division. Now, let's call this one regular division. The single division sign returns floating number, and the second one is with two slashes. It returns a whole number. Also, we have the exponent operator that is indicated with two asterisk signs. So in this case, we're saying 10 to power of 3. And when we run this, we get 1000. And finally, we have the modulus operator, which is indicated by % sign. And this returns the remainder of the division of the 10 by 3. So in this case, the result should be 1. So these are the arithmetic operators in Python. Okay, let's talk about if statement in Python. We use if statements to make decisions in our program. For example, let's declare a variable called user and make it equal to input with the message enter your name. Let's imagine that we are creating a program for giving access to our users. Let's say I want to give access to user with name Carl. So to check the username, we are going to use if statement. We type if user equal Carl. And at the end of each if statement, we have to put colon. And look what happens when I press enter. My cursor is automatically indented. And this represents a block of code. So the code that I write over here will be executed if our statement is true. Otherwise, it's not going to be executed. So let me show you. Print welcome back plus user. Okay, now let's run the program, and I'm going to write Carl. And because our if statement is true, we get a message back saying welcome back Carl. Now let's try the same thing, but let's type a different name. So let's type Mark, and because our user is not equal to Carl, our if statement check returns false and Python doesn't run the print statement. Okay, now let's say we want to return a message saying that the user doesn't exist. Similar as when you put the password and it says password is incorrect. To do that, we are going to use else statement. The else statement is simpler than the if statement. Basically, we are telling Python, if our if statement is not true, run the else statement. Let's not forget the colon, and let's print user doesn't exist. And when I run and type Mark, I get user doesn't exist. So this time Python checked if user equals Carl and it received false. Then because we have the else statement, it printed user doesn't exist. Okay, now let's say we want to check multiple users. To do that, we use elif statement. The elif statement can be used as many times as we want, but it must come up after if statement and before else statement. So basically we start with if statement. We can only have one if statement. Then we can use as many elif statements as we want. And at the end we can have only one else statement. So the elif works the same way as the if statement. And I can type user equals Mark. And once again print welcome back plus user. Okay, now let's run the program and see what happens. So I'm going to enter Mark and I get back welcome back Mark. So this time Python checked the first if statement and it was false. Then it checked the elif statement, and because it was true, we never reached the else statement. And we got back welcome Mark. So this is how we use if statement to make decisions in our programs. Okay, now let's talk about while loops. In Python, we use while loops to repeat a block of code multiple times. For example, imagine you want to print numbers from 1 to 5. One way of doing this is just to code like this. Print 1, print 2, print 3, and so on. But this is not really practical. What if you want to print numbers up to 1 million? You would have need to create 1 million lines of print statement. And this is where the while loops comes to rescue. Let's create a variable called count equals 1. Then on a new line type while count is less than or equal to 5 and colon at the end. And when I press enter, it's automatically indented. So everything we write is going to be inside of that while loop. And let's print count, then count equals count plus 1. Let's run the program, and we have all the numbers from 1 to 5. Let's change the 5 to 100 and see if the while loop works the same. And yes, it works the same. We have all the numbers from 1 to 100. So how does it work? The first thing that happens when we run this program, Python is creating the variable called count equals 1. Then we are telling Python, while count is less than or equal to 100, run line 4 and 6. So basically, until our while loop is equal to true, we will run continuously the same loop over and over again. But in this case, we're printing the count, then we're adding 1 to the count. And when the count reaches 100, our while loop is equal to false. That's why we stop at 100. Okay, let me add to this code so we can have a better understanding. Let's create user input variable equals input, and for the string enter exit to end. Then let's use if statement, if user input dot lower. If you remember, this is one of the methods that we can use with string, equal exit. Then let's print exit the program, goodbye. And there is another statement that you should know. It's called break. Break statement is used to exit loops permanently. It works only with loops. We use it to terminate the loop based on the condition. In this case, we are trying to tell Python if user types exit, we should run our if statement and we should break the while loop. Okay, let's run the program. We can see the printed count. Then we can see our user input. It's asking us to enter exit to end. Let's enter no. Nothing happened because our if statement was false, and now we're in the second iteration. Let's type n couple of times. As you can see, the count is still rising. Now let's type exit. And once we typed exit, our if statement was true, and we got exiting the program printed, and our while loop was ended. I hope you understood how to use the while loop. And if you were wondering why I used the lower method, let me show you why. I will run the program again. Let's type s couple of times. And now let's type exit in uppercase. And as you can see, we still have exited the while loop because we used the lower method. It's a really good way of using the lower method because sometimes people can make the first letter uppercase, or in this case, all of them uppercase. In our if statement, we are making sure that all of the user inputs are turned to lowercase, then they are checked to the string that we are looking for. Just to recap, the while loop in Python is like a repeating task. It keeps doing something over and over again as long as a certain condition is true. The loop checks the condition before each round. If the condition becomes false, the loop stops. You can use break to exit the loop early if needed. Okay, let's talk about lists. In Python, we use lists whenever we want to represent a list of objects, like a list of numbers or a list of names. Let me show you. So I'm going to create a variable called names and set it to list of names. In Python, we use square brackets to represent the list. And now I can add one or more objects to the list, or we can even leave it empty and add the data later. But I'm going to add a bunch of names now, like Luna, Emma, Carl, Noah, and I think it should be enough. Before we move on, I want you to pay attention that I'm separating each element with a comma. Okay, now let's print our names. And let's take a look. It comes out exactly as we declared it. Now we can get individual elements from our list also. Let's say we want to print only the first name in our list. Here we type our square brackets and we type 0. You might ask why 0, shouldn't it be 1? But Python uses zero-based indexing because it's easier for computers to manage and work with memory. So basically Python counts from 0 and goes up. So in this case, when we are trying to select the first name, we type index 0. And when we run the program, we get Luna. Okay, now a question. What do you think this will return? If we use the 0 to indicate the first element, we use -1 to indicate the last element. And when we run it, we get Noah. And we even can do something like this. This represents the second element from the end of our list. So it should return Carl. Okay, now let's say we made a mistake in our original list. It shouldn't be Luna, it should be some other name. To reset it, we type names 0 equals, and let's say our new name should be Bob. And when we run it, we can see that the lists have been updated. We can also select a range of values. For example, let's say we're only interested in the first two names. So in here we have to type two indexes, the starting index and the ending index, separated by colon. So our starting index should be 0 and our ending index should be 0, 1, 2. Now Python should return all the elements from starting index to the end index, but excluding the end index. So it's going to return only the element index 0 and 1. Let's take a look, and here are only the first two names. Okay, now let's say we want to add new names to our list. So to add new names, we are going to use append. We type names.append, we open the parentheses, and inside of the parentheses we are going to add our new name. Let's add Ava, and when we use append, it always adds the new data to the end of the list. Let's run the program and see what happened. And as you can see, now we have Ava at the end of our list. Okay, there is another useful method that we can use with list. It's called pop. I think you can guess how pop works. We type names.pop, we open the parentheses, and inside of the parentheses we can type the index of the element that we want to remove from our list. So I'm going to remove Luna from my list, and when I run it I can see that now the first element is Emma. So this is how we use list in Python. When writing a Python program, there are times that you want to iterate over a list and access each item inside of that list individually. Let me show you. Let's declare a variable called numbers equal list, and let's add numbers from 1 to 5 to that list. Okay, now let's imagine that we want to access each and every item in the list individually. To do that, we are going to use for loop. Let's start by typing for. Then we have to declare a new variable. It's common practice to use item or just the letter I. This variable item will be representing the individual item that we have selected from our list. Then type in numbers and don't forget the colon at the end. So this is what we call for loop. With this for loop we can iterate over all the items in our numbers list. In each iteration, this item variable will be holding only one value. So in the first iteration, or we can say loop, the item variable will be equal to 1. Then in the second loop, it will be equal to 2, then to 3, and so on. Now let's print item and run our program. We see each number on a new line. Okay, let's add a little bit to our for loop to make it easier to understand how it works. First, let's declare a new variable called new numbers, and it's going to be equal to list, and we are going to leave the list empty. Then inside of our for loop block, let's type new numbers dot append, and we want to append the item variable. Let's append it and let's type +1. So now let's say in first iteration, our variable item will be equal 1 plus 1. And we will append that number to our new numbers list. So let's type on a new line print new number, and pay attention that this print statement is not indented anymore, indicating that it's not inside of our for loop block, so it will not be printed every single iteration. And when we run our program, we see that our item was printed every iteration. And every iteration we have appended item +1 to our new numbers list. And then when our for loop was ended, we have printed the new numbers list. Okay, I want you to remember that we use for loops when we have specific list of things that we want to go through. It helps us to go over each item in the list one by one. On the other hand, we use while loop when we want to keep doing something until a certain condition is no longer true. It's like saying keep doing this as long as something is the way that I want it to be. Okay, welcome to the last stretch. As you can see, we are going to be creating our own game. It's going to be a trivia game. Don't worry, it's not going to be super difficult, but at the same time, it's not going to be very easy to build. If you really want to learn Python, you have to start thinking on your own how to approach a difficult project, how to approach writing a code on your own, because even if you watch all the tutorials, all the courses on programming, Python or any other languages, the only way you're going to start learning, it's by doing something on your own, doing your own research, googling a bunch of stuff, asking questions, thinking of new ideas, approaching new projects. Imagine if you watch how somebody rides a bike. Even if you watch them for thousands of hours, eventually you will understand how the bike works, how to ride it, how to keep your balance. But at the end of the day, you have to start riding the bicycle on your own. You have to go through corners, go through potholes. That's why when you do any sort of project, I encourage you to do your best. Because at the end of the day, I want you to feel that you have accomplished something. Even if this course is only 40 minutes, it might help you to understand that you want to pursue programming career, or you want to have a hobby as a programmer, or you want to create something big, a game or an app or something. Just try and do your best. That's all I can ask. Okay, enough talking. So this is how we're gonna be creating our game. You're not gonna be coding along with me. So I have created steps that will guide you to creating this game on your own. You should follow each step, and at the end of the steps, you will have the game ready if you do everything correctly. So right now, I will go over each step and explain it a little bit in the details. And at the end, once you have completed all the steps, you're gonna have the game, and then I will show you how I created the game. So there is not only one way of creating this game. There is millions and millions of ways that we can write the code and get the same result. So I hope that at the end you will have created your own game. And if not, you can follow along with me and we will create it together. So let's start with our step 1. Plan your trivia game structure. Define the game flow. So first we have to think how our game will behave. In this case, the game will ask series of questions to the user. In this case, since we're creating a trivia game, it should start something. We should welcome our user, and then we should prompt something, answer the following question. And then we present the question, and we should present 4 answers. Then our user will input their answer. So as you can see, we are going to use input. The game will check if answers are correct and keep track of the score. So we have to create some sort of if statement to check if the user answer correspond with the correct answer that we have in our code. Then we have to create some sort of variable that will keep the track of our score. And at the end, the game will display the user total score. So once we are done with all of our questions, the user will see their score printed. Next, we have decide on the content. Choose at least 4 trivia questions. It doesn't have to be 4. You can create more, you can create less. And for each question, you have to provide 4 multiple choice options. I think the idea is pretty easy. We greet the user, we provide question, we provide answers, we take a look what their input is. If they're correct, we give them a score, and then we ask the next question. And if they're correct, we add to that score. And at the end of the loop, we will present their final score. Okay, let's go to step 2. Create lists for questions, options, and answers. Create a list called questions to store trivia questions. Create a list called options to store the multiple choice options for each question. Create a list called correct answers to store the correct options number for each question. So I have show you example how you should go about creating those lists. I don't think there is much to explain. At this point, you should be able to understand what's going on. So let's go to step number 3. Set up the main game loop. Allow replayability. Use a while loop to let the user play the game multiple times. Initialize a variable play again with the value yes. Continue the loop as long as player again equal yes. This is a little bit tricky. So we're gonna create a while loop and we're gonna use a variable play again. And at the end of our game, we're gonna ask our user if they wanna play again the game. If they type yes, then the while loop will continue from the beginning. And if they type anything else, the while loop is gonna end. Step 4, initialize the score and question index. Score tracking. Before starting the quiz, set a variable score to 0. Question indexing. Set a variable index to 0 to keep track of the correct question. Determine number of questions. Create a variable number of questions equal to length of your question list. Step 5. Loop through each question. Use a while loop that runs as long as index is less than number of questions. Display the question and options. Print the current question using question index. Loop through options index to display the multiple choice options. I hope now you can understand why we created those lists in the step 2. Okay, now step 6. Get user input and validate the answer. Prompt the user, use the input function to get the user answer. Convert the input to integer using int. Next, check the answer. Use a if statement to compare the user answer with correct answer index. If correct, print correct and increment score by 1. And obviously, if it's incorrect, print incorrect or something funny. Then we have increment the index. After checking the answer, increment index by 1 to move to next question. So once we have question answered, we increment the index to move to the next one, because if we don't add to the index, we're going to be looping through the same question. Okay, this is our last slide, so we are close to the end. Step 7, display the final score after the quiz loop. Once all question has been asked, print quiz complete. Then display the user total score out of the number of questions. Step 8. Ask the user to play again. Prompt to replay. Use the input function to ask, do you want to play again, yes or no? If the user types yes, the game restarts. If the user types anything else, print thank you for playing, goodbye, and exit the loop. Okay, now I want you to pause the video and start coding. And believe me, try your best, because if you succeed creating this game, you're gonna feel so good, you're gonna feel so smart at the end. But for some reason you can't complete this project, you're gonna come back and we're gonna code together. We're gonna go over everything, all the steps, and we're gonna create the game from the scratch together. Okay, now pause the video and good luck. Okay, welcome back. I hope all of you were successful and you're just back to check how I wrote the code. Okay, as you already saw, I always like adding a lot of comments. So let's start by just typing trivia game. Then we want to add another comment. List of questions. I have already typed a list of questions, so I will just copy and paste. Then we go down a little bit and let's do list of options for each question. And as well, I have already created the options. So let's just copy and paste. And underneath, let's do list of correct answers. And in the parentheses, let's do number corresponding to the correct option. And now let's create a variable called correct answers equal list, and let's do 3, then 3, 1, 1. And let's write what each number represents. Paris, 12, Python, pink. This way, if we ever come back to this project in, let's say, a 6 month or 1 year, we will know what each number represents, what are the correct answers. Okay, now the fun part. Let's comment start of the game loop. Let's create a variable called play again equal quotation mark yes. Then to create our while loop, we're gonna do while play again equal yes. With this line, we're basically telling Python while play again is yes, then we should keep running this loop. If the play again variable is going to be something else, then the while loop will stop. Next, we want to have our score, and let's make it equal 0. After we have created our score, let's do print. Let's do welcome to trivia game. After that, let's print answer the following questions. By entering the number corresponding to your choice. After that, let's do comment initialize index. Let's create a variable called index and let's make it equal 0. Then we have comment number of questions. Then we create a variable called number of questions and let's make it equal to 4. And a comment, we have 4 questions. Okay, now we have everything ready to start looping through each of our questions. So let's do comment loop through each question using a while loop. Let's start by typing while index less than number of questions. Print questions plus string index plus 1. And then we have quotation mark colon just to separate it, plus questions index. This is how we are going to be printing our questions. Then let's do comment display options. For option in options index, print option. And with this for loop, we're printing each option of the answer corresponding to that question. Okay, now we have greeted our user. We have asked them a question and provided them with options to answer. Now we have to capture their answer. Let's do get user input. Answer equal int. Because we want to convert the answer to an integer, because input function automatically captures any input. Even if you put down a number, it's going to capture as a string. That's why we want to do int parentheses, then we want to use the input function, and in the quotation marks, let's do enter the number of your answer. Okay, that's done. Now let's check the answer. Let's do comment, check if answer is correct. Let's do if answer equal correct answers, index, print correct. Then we want to change the score. We do score equals score plus 1. We're adding a 1 to our existing score. Then let's do else print incorrect. If the answer is incorrect, we print incorrect. Okay, after we have successfully checked the correct answer, we want to move to the next question. So let's do comment, move to the next question. And it's very easy. We do index equal index plus 1. With this, at the end of our loop, we are moving to the next question. And as you can see in our while loop, we're asking if index while index less than number of questions. If we raise the index by 1 at each iteration, at the end of the day, it's gonna run out of questions, and at that point we're gonna stop the while loop. Okay, so after we have stopped the while loop, we want to go back 1 in the indentation, so we're not inside of the while loop. Let's do comment, display the final score, and let's do print trivia completed. And here, let's do another print. In quotation mark, let's do your score plus string score plus quotation mark out of, and let's do plus string number of questions. So here we're just gonna, it's a nice way of representing their score, or we can do just simple your score and print their score. Okay, we're almost done. At the end, we want to ask our user if they want to play again. So let's do comment, ask if user wants to play again. Okay, but how do we do that? Previously, we have created a variable called play again, and we have attached that variable to our main loop, in which we say while play again is equal yes, we will keep running the while loop. So right now we want to capture that variable. So let's do play again equal input. So meaning whichever input our user gonna enter, that's gonna change our value of our play again variable. So let's do you want to play again? Yes or no? And then let's do if play again not equal yes. Then we want to type a simple message such as thank you for playing. This might be a little bit confusing, but it's really simple. Because we said our loop will run if our play again is equal yes. In this case, if our user enter anything else besides yes, we're gonna print thank you for playing again, and the loop will stop. And if our user types yes, our if statement is gonna be false, and we will go back to our beginning of our while loop. Okay, now let's test our code. And I know for some of you who were screaming the last couple of minutes that we have an error in our code, I noticed it, but I didn't want to stop and go back. That's why, and it's a good example to show you what happens when you get an error. Let's run our program, and right away we can see our error. It's in line 24, and PyCharm is so helpful that it even indicates What's the error? Syntax error, expected colon. Let's go to line 24, and over here we can see even a red line indicating that something is wrong in this part. So we want to just add the colon, and this should fix everything. Let's run it again, and everything is good. We have our greeting, we have that we have to answer a question. Then we have our question, what is capital of France? Let's put our answer. Let's put 3. And yes, it works. I have printed correct. And we have our second question. Let's answer that as well. So far, everything works. Let's answer this one. And we have our final question. And for this one, let's do something wrong. Let's do 8. And we have incorrect. Trivia complete. Your score 3 out of 4. And do you want to play again, yes or no? Let's type yes, and we can see that everything works. Let me go quickly over these questions. And at the end, let's type no and see what happens. And you can see exit code 0, meaning our program have stopped. I think this project turned out to be very good. I hope all of you were successful creating this little game with me. I want to congratulate you because you just have created your own program from scratch. Now you can proudly call yourself a programmer because it's not gonna be a lie. You just created one. I just want to say thank you for taking this journey with me. I hope this course was at least a little bit helpful. So at the end, I just want to say thank you and good luck in your programming journey. And if you have liked this course, I have a couple of other courses that I encourage you to check it out. It will make me very happy. So I wish you all the luck and have a good rest of your day. Thank you for your time. In behalf of CGEV.